Churchill wants to find success as the ability to go from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. Is your business and organization using failure to drive your innovation engine? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Ken Hughes. Let's talk about failure. So last week we all watched SpaceX's amazing milestone achievement of returning the Starship rocket to ground with just thrusters and AI micro precision, with the two chopsticks catching the giant 23-story high, biggest thing that's ever been in space back to Earth, just catching it with two tiny mechanical arms. It was just, the precision engineering was amazing. But what's really interesting about this story is watching the faces of the people in the control room as this happened. So the majority, they've worked on this for years. They know it should work from a calculation and design point of view, but actually seeing it work, look at the faces. They're just so surprised, so astonished that they've actually achieved what they set out to achieve. I think they all kind of expected it to fail. They all expected it to be a learning moment. And just seeing it work was amazing for them. I think that's because they work in SpaceX in a culture of failure. Elon Musk has always said that he doesn't expect to succeed first time, and he's happy to try again until he learns. And he learns from every Starship accident that happened, because there was many before what we saw last week. Now, interestingly, about 5 days later, I was in Miami at a bar having a margarita, and next to me, I got talking to the lady next to me, and she turned out to be a NASA project engineer. And it's not every day you meet someone from NASA, so the conversation was fascinating all around multiplanetary exploration and lunar colonization, which was her own project. And so obviously SpaceX came up at some point. And talking about risk, she said a really interesting thing. She said that, well, of course SpaceX have achieved what they've achieved because it's nothing for Elon Musk to spend $130 or $160 million on a rocket and not have it work. But in NASA, of course, we don't have that luxury. We're working on tax dollars. And so it's the government's money, and therefore that we can't take the risks until we know it'll work. And I think that's really interesting, because what it points to in a corporate world is that if an organization is working inside the box and being really careful with everything, they of course cannot move at the same speed and have the same success than an organization, let's say more with a startup culture, who's pivoting, who's agile, who's able to access maybe resources, yes, but ultimately has a different attitude to risk. And so that is a huge learning for us all. How have we embedded failure into the organization, where people are terrified of failing and therefore not driving our growth and innovation engine as forward as we would like? A recent Forbes study showed that 2/3 of employees have a fear of failure and the impact that failure could have on the organization they work for. Similarly, a McKinsey report showed that nearly 50% of all employees have a psychological state of fear around failure in the workplace. And a third study from the American Psychological Association shows that 80% of people at work are stressed, and the majority of that stress stems from a fear of failure, a fear of getting it wrong in their role inside the organization. 3 studies all pointing to the same problem. And so on one hand, we have organizations that are saying, please innovate, please be creative, give us new ideas. But at the same time, then the employees who work in those organizations are not feeling that they're supported from a failure point of view. And that's a problem. That's a real problem. So the first question here is to have a think about your own organization and your own leadership style and your attitude towards failure. I spend so much time at events all over the world, and lots of them are internal events. And an internal event, usually at the end of the day, there's a dinner and there's an award ceremony, and the people who have achieved great things are awarded for those things during the last year. And it's always a lovely night. People dress up, black tie, glittery dresses, fantastic. But there is never, I always think this, there's always an award or two missing. Like there's never the award for someone who ran a project, it didn't work, but they're being awarded for that failure. They're being awarded for trying. They're being awarded for bringing the company in a new direction, which hasn't worked out yet, but maybe it will. And those awards are missing. We only ever celebrate success. And in fact, it starts, of course, in school, in high school, and in universities. We grade our children. We tell them that the higher the score, the better and more successful they are. We do not accept failure. In fact, if you fail, you don't get to go to university. You don't get to get what you want to get. And so from the very, very young age, we teach them that failure isn't acceptable and only success would be praised. I'm not suggesting a medal for all approach, which isn't great either, but we do need to celebrate those who try and who fail, because we need to encourage them to fail and fail fast, fail again, because it's in those learnings, that repeated learnings, that we actually build towards success. So success and failure aren't a continuum. It's not like one and one end. It's the same side of the same coin, two sides of the same coin. So this idea that like failure are the building blocks that will lead you to success. And some companies get this, like Pixar, Disney's Pixar have a culture around failure, a culture around mistakes. They encourage mistakes. They know that mistakes are the way you build to where you need to get to go. Google are the same with their 20% rule. The 20% rule states that you can have 20% of your work time to work on your own personal projects. Now what they're really doing is they're saying, well, for 20% of the time, you don't need to be doing what we want you to do. You can do whatever you want to do. And in that space, of course, you can make as many mistakes as you like. It's your personal project, so that the stress, the pressure isn't on you to reach the goal. So actually in that space, amazing work happens, of course, because when you take the pressure away, when you increase the ability to fail, actually people do amazing work. And they use that work then in their other projects with Google. It's important to take risks. I mean, I saw this shirt online, it looked really sexy. Now I look like a pirate doing a podcast. It's important to take risks. Sometimes they don't pay off. And I think back to Musk, if you look at the We Robot launch a few weeks ago now, he shows the world the Optimus robots, he shows the world the autonomous cab, the autonomous van, so robo-van, robo-taxi, wow. Now, there are some cynics that immediately say, well, yeah, but the autonomous vehicles are driving on a movie set in that launch, it's not real life. The Optimus Prime robots weren't actually working autonomously either, they were all being controlled by humans, it turns out. I would be of the other camp. I would think, well, okay, that might be true for launch. A marketing launch is pretty important, so you want to get it right. The share price is at stake after all. Whereas in 12 months, in 24 months, will the products he showcased be the same? No, definitely not, because Musk has an attitude to risk, an attitude to innovation. He will keep working at those until they're right, just like that catching the Starship. He'll keep working at it until it gets right. Keep lowering the costs. The ability of those autonomous vehicles and Optimus Prime robots will get better and better and better because they are being developed inside an organization that encourages failure, encourages risk-taking. And that's why showing them, I think that launch kind of reminds me of the 2007 launch of Steve Jobs and the iPhone. There's a step change coming and we can all bring it back to that day. I think that launch, in those couple of weeks where the Starship docks and that launch happens, tech, AI, we're setting down an amazing journey, but the companies that are succeeding are the ones that will accept failure as a core component of how they operate. And I think the question that you need to ask yourself now as a leader is, how are you leading from the front on this? How are you ensuring that the people who work underneath you understand that they can take experiments, understand that they can take on projects that may not work, lean into failure? Do we have budgets for failure? Do we have budgets, like time budgets, allocations for projects that they might fail? We need to celebrate failure in a much more stronger way inside our organizations. And only then will we truly build innovative organizations that will be able to move forward. Lauren Bacall said it best, the famous Hollywood actress, standing still is the fastest way to move backwards in a rapidly changing world. We cannot stand still, and the best way of not standing still is to keep trying new things. Until then, next time, I'm Ken Hughes.